Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and it's time for the Gameweek 27 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid, where we're going to have a look at some players that maybe you should be getting and some others that maybe you shouldn't, and who you're going to be selling as well. So guys, if you do enjoy this one, please do leave a like, please do subscribe, but let's get on with this video. Okay, so buys are players you probably don't have but should consider bringing in. Sells are players you probably have but should consider removing. Keeps are players you might be thinking about removing but I think you should keep them. And avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now but I think they are potential traps that should be avoided. We're going to go two with each category, starting off with some buys. Okay, so our first buy is Ivan Toney. I think he is the #1 transfer target. If you don't have him already, he would be the exact player who I'd be very keen to buy indeed. We know he's a very, very good player indeed, and he's been scoring for fun this season, the third highest goal scorer in the Premier League this season, and he's got a very nice double game week against two relegation-threatened teams in Everton and Southampton, who haven't had the most fantastic results recently. We're expecting Brentford, a team competing for European places, to go there and get a couple of good results here. So yes, Toney has got a couple of goals in his last 4 games in the last 5 game weeks, decent amount of XG and XA there as well, so he is expected to perform in these games, taking those shots on penalties as well, never misses those penalties. And looking at a lot of algorithms, they are predicting not only Toney to be the highest scorer in Game Week 27, so he's got the highest predicted points, which makes him probably the best captain pick. For me, I'm pretty convinced by this point that I am going to be captaining Toney in Game Week 27, so therefore I definitely have to recommend you guys buy him in order to captain him this week. But at the same time, he's also the highest predicted points for the next 3 game weeks, so between Game Week 27 and 29, because he has that double game week in 27, double game week in 29, and a fixture in Game Week 28 where a lot of other teams are blanking. It is a decent fixture as well against Leicester. That definitely means that Toney is going to be a really high scorer over the next 3 game weeks, so he's going to rack you up a lot of points. And then after that, from Game Week 30 onwards, that's kind of a time where you can maybe think about removing him. Spoken about this loads before, so I won't go into it in too much detail right now, but I would say that don't worry too much about Toney getting banned from football. It's not going to happen for a little while if he does get a ban, so don't worry about it. Just try and get him for these 3 game weeks at the absolute minimum. See how many points you can rack up with him. It should be quite a lot. I really do think he is the #1 player to get, and in general, if you are looking for players to buy for Game Week 27, we do want to be focusing on Brentford to a degree because they are a good side and they do have double game weeks and no blanks as well. So you have that real advantage of getting in those players who also don't blank in 29. So you can have that full squad, you know, maybe 10 or 11 players ready to go in Game Week 28 and take advantage of the double game weeks at the same time. So you can't really lose on this one. Toney has been smashing it this season. He's probably going to get around 11.8 points over the double game week, judging by his previous results. He's kind of averaging 11.8 points per pair of fixtures that he starts in this season. If you get that amount of points, you know, 11, 12 points, you're going to be very, very pleased with that result as a captaincy. You know, you could always maybe potentially get more. You never know, with easier fixtures, you could get even more than that as well. So I think it's just like the best pick to go for right now. So definitely #1 transfer target of the week, if you don't own him already, is Toney. I would even consider supplementing with some other Brentford players as well, particularly the defenders. Not massively keen on Mbumo because I don't think he's very clinical, but certainly defenders from Brentford look pretty good right now. David Raya, for example, in goal, he's probably the best goalkeeper to go for right now. Ethan Pinnock and Rico Henry in defence as well, particularly Rico Henry, who I do think is the best defender for Brentford to go for. These are the guys you want to be targeting, but that's not to say I don't like some Brighton players as well, particularly for captaincy. You might be thinking about Brighton players. I think you could potentially go there, but let's talk about them next. Who is the best Brighton midfielder to go for? Well, to me, it is Solly March. Solly March, for me, is going to be the #1 midfielder to go for, and that's not to say the others are bad. For me, it's between March, McAllister, and Mitoma, and I will probably put those 3 midfielders in that order as well if you pushed me, but all 3 of them are great FPL picks. So just because I'm saying, you know, I feel like March is slightly better than the others, it doesn't mean that the others are bad. Definitely not. So let me kind of talk about the 3 players. So first of all, March, he's the guy on the screen right now. We've got this double game week against Leeds and Crystal Palace. Very nice double game week indeed. Well, March has kind of been in many ways the, I don't want to say talisman exclusively, because he's not a talisman in the same way as Tony is, where everything in the attack goes through Tony for Brentford. In Brighton, it's a little bit more split, which does impact our captaincy decision as well, because, you know, I'm expecting Brighton, they're a great attack, they're a better attack than Brentford. They probably will score a couple more goals than Brentford over the double game week, but it's a little bit more difficult to tell who they're going to come from. But if you were to make a prediction, you'd probably say March. So, for example, guys, you can see on screen right now some of his stats recently. 1.32 expected goals, 2.86 expected assists. And I think this assist potential is the thing that puts March ahead of his kind of rivals, his teammates. You know, McAllister, Mitoma also have a kind of similar amount of XG. McAllister actually slightly higher, but penalties do help that factor. But certainly, no one's really out there in terms of XG. But in terms of XA, that really gives March the edge because he is miles ahead of his teammates there. And he's taking a decent amount of shots, sort of 3 shots per game, which is pretty decent. A decent amount of shots in the box. He's creating big chances. He's taken loads of touches in the box. In fact, in the last game, for example, he took more touches in the box than McAllister and Mitoma, which I know is going to sound a little bit crazy because those other guys were the ones who got the points, right? So we kind of look at the last game week and we think, Mitoma, McAllister, they smashed it. So why are we talking about March? Well, his long-term numbers are a lot better since game week 17, I guess, since the return. He has been a lot better. A right winger under De Zerbi is always a very, very good thing. And March really has been reborn. He's so much about what is happening. But that's not to say the other two guys are bad. So let's talk about the other two in comparison to March a little bit. So Mitoma is very much a low-volume type of player. He only really typically takes 1 shot per match. And you will be like kind of hoping in a way for that 1 shot to be the shot that pays off for you, which isn't always the case. He is more clinical than March probably, but his volume of shots is so much lower that maybe in a double game week, you're just kind of hoping for the more shots you take, the more of a chance you get a bit lucky there. You know, you're playing the luck a little bit, I guess. But Mitoma, more clinical, but far less shot volume. Basically no creativity for Mitoma either. Only really makes 1 key pass per game. So in that sense, you are really enjoying watching the player. You know he's fantastic, but you're not going to get as many opportunities to score. So you have those opportunities really do have to count for Mitoma at the moment. He is being isolated very wide on the pitch. He's not getting as many touches in the area. And you have to consider in the last game, for example, his goal was from his 1 shot. His assist was from winning a penalty. Is that something that we can replicate every game? Not necessarily. And I think you do give yourself a slightly better chance with someone like March. As for McAllister, he is a player who, and I've kind of spoken about this before, he's a much riskier player that you do depend on luck a little bit. Now, last game week was a bit of a freak. We're not expecting him to score 15 points every game week. He's not going to get a penalty every game week. But again, when you consider the volume of games, you know, double game week in 27, double game week in 29, there's every chance that Brighton get 1 more penalty during that time, and we know McAllister's going to take it and hopefully going to score it as well. McAllister does, I really do feel like he is going to be sticking in that central attacking midfield position and can continue to do very well there, creating a little bit more from that position, taking a huge amount of more shots. So he is taking a lot of shots as well, McAllister, like very high volume of shots, just like March, maybe even slightly more at times. So he's obviously a very good option as well, but he's a little bit more high risk, high reward. You are going to depend on free kicks. You are going to depend on those penalties as well that do occasionally come about. March is more reliable. He's doing more from open play. He is taking those corners. You know, we get loads of corners per game, every game really, for Brighton in particular. And we are seeing that March is taking those corners, so that means more opportunities to get those assists from those corners. So he is more reliable, I would say. March is the most reliable of the 3 guys. His returns haven't necessarily been through the roof recently, but the amount he's creating for his teammates is really, really impressive. So if you are absolutely pushed, you can only have 1 of the 3 Brighton midfielders for this game week. Solly March would be my pick, but if you can get 2, I think that would be even better. If you can get, I don't know, all 3 of them, I don't know, maybe that's an option for you guys as well. Maybe you can go for 1 defender, 2 midfielders, something like that. That's probably what I would be looking to do. But March would be my number 1 pick, then McAllister, and then Mitoma. But then please do not mistake that for me saying that any of those 3 is a bad, but 3 players are bad. They're not. They're all fantastic picks. But sometimes we've got to try, when we're kind of pushed for an answer, sometimes it's a 50-50 decision, sometimes it's a 51-49 kind of decision, and you have to push for an answer. The answer for me is Solly March as a buy for Game Week 27. Mahrez is a pretty obvious sell right now. We know he has very high upside, and whenever he does play, he really can go absolutely crazy with those FPL points, but he is so rotation risk at the moment, and we find this every time. We've spoken about this before. Whenever the Champions League comes about, Mahrez is just suddenly mudded. So if you've got Mahrez right now, you're probably going to be looking at moving him on, to be honest. He is a midfielder, and if we're looking at those Brighton midfielders, particularly a Mahrez to a Brighton midfielder really does seem like a really, really obvious transfer to go for. Crystal Palace away isn't exactly a bad fixture, but do we even know for sure that he's going to play in that game? When we're talking about Mahrez, maybe plays against Crystal Palace, maybe doesn't play against Crystal Palace, compared to, you know, these Brighton midfielders who are pretty much nailed on for 2 fixtures in one game week against some pretty easy oppositions as well. It's pretty obvious who you would rather have in your FPL team right now. So I think it's a really, really simple switch. In general, Man City players not too keen on because we've got that blank game week in 28. So at the moment, a lot of us are wanting to get those game week 27 double game week players, but we're also having to keep a close eye on game week 28 to make sure we have really, we're looking to get hopefully 10 or 11 players with fixtures in game week 28. I don't think there's anything too wrong with having 10 or maybe even 9 players in game week 28 who actually have fixtures, as long as they are the right players, the players with those nice fixtures, the players who score a lot of FPL points, playing for those good teams against weaker oppositions. Those are the kind of players we want to have. And if you can't maximize your entire team, you can't get 11 players, I don't think it's the end of the world. And either of those of you guys who are free hitting in game week 28, which I think is a valid strategy, you're still looking at Mahrez against Liverpool in 29, a slightly improved defence there from Liverpool, but at the same time, it's a single game week. You know, in game week 29, we have got so many players with doubles. So we're, again, same situation as we have in game week 27. What would you rather have? A rotation risk player in game week 29, or guaranteed 2 fixtures from a different midfielder? Is a really obvious answer to me. So therefore, Mahrez, all in all, the fact that he plays for Man City, the fact that he's rotation risk just makes him an absolute sell. This run of fixtures, it may look like the fixtures are not too bad, but the lack of doubles and the blank just means that he is just a sell for me. My next sell is Eddie Nketiah, and I know there's kind of 2 schools of thought here. Trossard is probably not going to be available for game week 27. We're looking at game week 28 at the earliest before Trossard returns. And then we also do have the fact that Gabriel Jesus is not quite ready yet either. The problem is that we do also have Emil Smith-Rowe sniffing around at the moment. Obviously, Reece Nelson scored a brace from the bench last week as well. So maybe we are going to see Reece Nelson or Emil Smith-Rowe maybe playing on that left-hand side of the Arsenal attack, and then Martinelli playing as the striker rather than Nketiah. So I would be very aware of that, be very wary of that at the moment, and therefore, is Nketiah even guaranteed with the injuries that Arsenal have? I would still say no. It does seem like he is being phased out of the team a little bit, which is disappointing for him, but he hasn't really been finishing his chances recently, and he has had a decent amount of chances as well. So in general, I feel like he is the kind of player I would sell. Fulham away is an okay fixture, but I don't think it's the most amazing fixture in the world. I think there are lots of better fixtures than Fulham away, so I wouldn't be getting too hyped up about the opportunity here. Fulham have drastically improved defensively since the World Cup break, so yeah, again, Nketiah, I don't think he's a must-have, and I feel like at 6.7 million, kind of roughly the kind of price Nketiah is, you can feasibly make that switch to Toney. Toney is only 1 million more expensive. If you can't afford to make a direct upgrade from Nketiah to Toney, which I definitely would do, by the way, there's also kind of opportunities to maybe downgrade one of your midfielders. So, for example, if you've got Mahrez and Nketiah right now, making that double switch, freeing up some cash by downgrading Mahrez to a Brighton midfielder, Solly March, and then upgrading the likes of Nketiah to Toney, I think even for a -4, that is a really, really valuable transfer, because you swapped out 2 rotation risk players for 2 players with a double game week with a really, really high upside there. So definitely something that I would be doing. I think these moves are really good moves to make, and yeah, definitely would be recommending that to you guys. So Nketiah for me is going to be a sell, even in the long term. We are going to look at Jesus coming back into the team soon. Trossard is going to be back at the latest by the end of the international break, which is going to be game week 29. So Nketiah is a player that you are going to have to sell at some point, no matter what, really. So you may as well get rid of him now and get him those high value players, high potential players. Okay, lots of players selling Fabian Schär. Fabian Schär obviously missed last game through injury. That was actually kind of due to concussion protocol in the game against Manchester United in the League Cup final. Fabian Schär unfortunately did take a small head injury there and had a little bit of concussion. So unfortunately, due to the rules in the Premier League, he was unable to play when he was kind of correctly diagnosed with that concussion. He was unable to play in game week 26, which meant he missed a game, which meant a lot of people were disappointed and maybe wondering whether Fabian Schär is going to be available for game week 27. However, we do know that concussion protocols, it's only really a few days before a player is allowed to come back into the team, and we do expect Fabian Schär to come straight back in against Wolves in game week 27. And even if he doesn't, even if he's not quite ready, I would still definitely recommend keeping him, but I'm pretty convinced, I'm pretty confident that he will be ready. The great thing about Fabian Schär is that he plays for a fantastic defence in Newcastle. Newcastle is still a really, really strong defence, and I wouldn't let recent results kind of distract you from that fact. They've played some very difficult games. They've had some difficult circumstances with, you know, Nick Pope red cards, for example, and have been a little bit unlucky, and I think they will get back to those clean sheets soon. And home games against Wolves, away games against Nottingham Forest, these are the real opportunities for your clean sheets, really, aren't they? These are the exact kind of fixtures you want for your clean sheets. The great thing about Fabian Schär as well is his attacking potential is really, really nice. It's not often that you see a defender taking this many shots on, particularly in this small volume of games. So in the last 5 game weeks, Fabian Schär's only played 3 games due to the blank game week and due to his concussion absence, I suppose. And he's had 8 shots during that time, 6 of those in the box, 0.63 XG. That's kind of going to mean that he's going to be scoring, what, 1 goal every 4 or 5 games, something like that, if he kind of keeps up with his XG quite well. So it's decent, and we see this all the time with Fabian Schär. He really is a very attacking centre-back. He's very much first choice when he's available, and yes, he is a little bit pricey, so he's not someone I'd necessarily be desperate to buy, but I still do think he is an interesting player to buy. He's got 2 back-to-back decent fixtures. Game week 28 is a game week where we're going to struggle a little bit for players anyway, and I think Fabian Schär, you know, if you're talking about, I know some people will be trying to go for a Rico Henry or even Pinnock or maybe a Pervis Estupinian instead of Fabian Schär and actually swapping him out. I'm not sure I would actually be doing that. I'd rather be selling some of my other defenders, because even like over the next 2 game weeks, who's going to score more over the next 2 game weeks? Pervis Estupinian in 1 double game week or Fabian Schär in 2 single game weeks. So particularly if you are lacking players a little bit who play in game week 28, I would say Fabian Schär is a definite keep. He's a player who I think could score a lot of points over the next 2 game weeks. He's got that double in 29 as well, which is always pretty good. That West Ham fixture in particular, you would hope that Newcastle could keep a clean sheet in that game. And in general, I just think he's a decent player to have in your team. So definitely would be keeping him. I would not be worrying about that little yellow triangle icon next to his name in the FPL app. The Dorito of death is not going to hurt you on this one. Fabian Schär is a keep. My next keep is Harry Kane. Why are so many people selling him? Like, I'm sure, like, it's quite strange because some people are saying, oh, I'm absolutely having to buy Harry Kane. Harry Kane is a must-have. I really want this player. I'm even going to sell Erling Haaland in order to get Harry Kane. And yet, when I look at the numbers, Harry Kane is one of the most sold players this game week. And I think that's partially due to the fact that the last couple of results for Spurs and Harry Kane maybe haven't been perfect. But Harry Kane is one of those players who ticks along nicely with those FPL points. He scores, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points per game week instead of having those crazy scores. I know some people often dismiss players like Harry Kane because they are consistently good, when really they prefer a player who scores 2 points, 2 points, 14 points, yay! 2 points, 2 points, 14 points, yeah! It's the same result at the end of the day, unless you're captaining this player. So you really do just got to kind of recognise how consistent Kane has been this season. He's the 2nd highest scoring player in FPL for a good reason. He often has a very decent back end to the season as well. And you look through some of these fixtures, Nottingham Forest at home. Forest have been terrible recently, conceding so many goals, conceding so many chances. And at home, you reckon Harry Kane can really do some damage there. In fact, if we are going to get one of those rare hauls from Harry Kane, he's only had a few this season, if he's going to score 10 points or more, you would back him to do it in a fixture like this. So therefore, anyone who's thinking about selling Harry Kane, I don't know who you're selling Harry Kane for. Maybe Tony. I would try and go a different direction if possible, even if taking a -4. If we're talking about players with high predicted points, again, Harry Kane, 2nd highest predicted points for game week 27, despite having a single game week. So that tells you a lot. Over the next 3 game weeks, he has 0 double game weeks, and again, is the 2nd highest predicted points player over that 3 game weeks. And that is just testament to how consistent he is. If you look at him over a period of time, you really will will notice, even though he's not getting any exciting points very often, he is ticking along so nicely that his cumulative points are just so nice. So Harry Kane is going to be a keep for me as well. Back him in this Nottingham Forest game, and I think he is even a player you could consider captaining despite his single game week, genuinely. Okay, controversial avoid number 1. So Cody Gakpo is going to go on the avoid list for me. And let me kind of try and explain why I do feel this way. Now, this is nothing in particular against Gakpo, but I do feel like he is slightly rotation risk, particularly in the slightly longer term, where we are going to see Jota and Firmino coming back into this Liverpool team. With Liverpool obviously got a Champions League game next week as well, which is maybe going to cause a little bit of rotation there as well against Real Madrid, a big deficit to overturn there. So they will be wanting to play at full strength. And in general, even if Gakpo does play, he is going to be not playing 90 minutes. Now, Bournemouth away is a fantastic fixture. And if we were on a free hit in game week 27, for example, then I would definitely say, yeah, okay, maybe we can have a think about this player. But for me, my big concern is the long term going for Cody Gakpo. So what I like about some other Liverpool players, so for example, Mo Salah, he's a player who is so nailed on, he's on those penalties, and he is, let's be honest, Liverpool's best attacker. Even even if he was playing less minutes, he would still be Liverpool's best attacker. So what you have with Salah is a very high upside player who can make back any hits that you need to take in the future to remove him again in an individual game like Bournemouth. Gakpo, I am not as convinced by that. So if you're going for Salah, I think that's fine. I think it's a nice, interesting and risky punt. But either way, you probably would be looking to remove some of those Liverpool players for game week 28. One, because Liverpool have a blank in game week 28. And two, because when we're looking at the double game week players in 29, this is a really difficult double game week for Liverpool, particularly those attackers, playing against two of the strongest defences in the league in Man City and Chelsea, both away from home, followed by Arsenal in game week 30. So think really, really honestly, do you really want Cody Gakpo in your team long term? Do you want him beyond game week 27? The answer is probably no. The answer is he would probably be one of the first players you would consider removing when looking to move on to other players, and therefore, is he worth 2 transfers to you? Maybe not. This is where things get a little bit trickier. I don't think he is going to be worth 2 transfers. So I would definitely rather go for some of those Brighton midfielders rather than Gakpo for game week 27. Certain other Liverpool players, I would say the same kind of thing. Darwin Nunez, for example. You know, if you're deciding between Nunez and going for Tony, it's a really obvious answer for me there. And yeah, certain other Liverpool players as well. I just would not be going for them because they are going to cost you 2 transfers to bring in and take out again. Now, I know I'm kind of setting myself up to fail a little bit here because Bournemouth, it could be a decent score for him. But what my point really is, not that I don't think these players can score well against Bournemouth, it's the fact that when you factor in the fact that you're going to have to use multiple transfers to be taking these players in and out and in and out and in and out, then that's going to be a little bit troublesome. And we're also talking about the opportunity cost of going for some of those other players, you know, Brighton midfielders, for example, who might score even more than Gakpo. So if Gakpo scores 8 points or something like that this game week, everyone's going to be like, hey, maybe he was a good pick. But then when you think, well, what if you just went for a Brighton player, he got 9 or 10 points, and you don't have to transfer him out again because you want him for the nice double in 29, then suddenly it looks not so good. So yeah, generally, I just don't really think I would be going for too many Liverpool players. If you already have these players, however, and I know people are going to scream at me about this, but if you already have these Liverpool players, definitely keep them. I am not saying sell them. And please do not mistake this for me saying sell Liverpool players. Do not do that. You'll be probably looking to sell them in game week 28, but for game week 27, no. If you have them, you keep them. But if you don't have them already, you may have missed the boat slightly on this one. If you wanted to get those Liverpool players, game week 25 was probably the time to get them in. I don't think we go back in on them too heavily at this point, particularly if you're going for multiple Liverpool players in game week 27 and you're filling up your team. All you're really doing is lessening and lessening and lessening the amount of fixtures you have in 28. You're forcing yourself to take hits in the future. You are also potentially getting double game week players who don't have very good double game weeks where there are other opportunities that are better. So yeah, I think that's my spiel there. Would be interesting to hear your thoughts on that one. Have I maybe missed the mark on this one? I know Gakpo is going to be very, very popular. But yeah, let me know what you think. Would you be going for him over the likes of certain other midfielders? What would be your reasoning for going for him if you are going to go for him? Yeah, what do you think about that one? And then Phil Foden is going to be another avoid. I don't know if this is quite as controversial, but I kind of spoke already about the Man City fixture situation, so I won't go on about that too much. But once again, no doubles in the immediate future, and we've got a blank game week as well. So in general, Man City players, not players we want to be going for too much really over the next period of games. We'll be looking elsewhere. Also rotation, we know what happens when Pep Guardiola sees everyone is transferring in Phil Foden. Suddenly Phil Foden finds himself benched for several months. It happens every time. I'm not trying to, I don't know, I don't know if Pep Guardiola follows FPL at all, but sometimes it is spooky how quickly these things change, how spookily quickly Foden is suddenly removed entirely for the Man City team as soon as he does very well for our FPL team. So I would be very worried about that. I'd be very concerned about that. And once again, I think what we really need to be considering, we know Foden when he plays is fantastic, will score you FPL points, but is it worth going for a rotation risk player in single game weeks / blank game weeks when you can go for nailed on players who are almost as good as Foden but play twice the amount of games and are nailed on? Again, easy decision as far as I'm concerned, and I would be looking to avoid Foden despite his recent burst of form. All right, quick summary, guys, because, this has been a long one. But basically, I would be looking primarily to go for Brentford and Brighton players for this game week. Double the fixtures. These are good teams as well with very good fixtures. They would be my primary focus. I probably wouldn't be looking to buy any player that doesn't double this game week. Obviously, there's going to be opportunities there for you, but in general, I like the double game week players the most this game week, and I would be looking to sell single game week players. The only other thing that maybe you want me to talk about is what to do with Robert Sanchez. I still don't know the answer to that one. I think there's different options. I don't think any option is particularly safe, but I am still trying to work out something for you on that one. So do make sure you stay tuned, and I'll try and figure out something that might work for us, because it's a situation I'm in, and it's a situation I'm not really confident about how to fix yet, but I'm working on it, guys. Trust me on that one. But yeah, in general, buy those double game week players. Tony is the goated player to buy right now. If you don't have him, he's your #1 pick. Make sure you're going for some Brighton midfielders as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like before you disappear. To subscribe as well if you're new around here. And we will be doing a wildcard video very soon as well. That's going to be probably tomorrow, actually, at this point. So stay tuned for that one. 100 experts to come as well, where we see what the top managers are up to and all the other regular content as well. So all in all, guys, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.